Alright, so last year the Knicks and Wolves agreed on a trade. The main two pieces being Julius Randle and Karl-Anthony Towns. I think at the time, most people had the Knicks winning this trade, myself included. I thought that Karl-Anthony Towns was definitely a more valuable player, and Julius Randle was just a more flawed player, and he had the reputation of, a little bit of shot chucking, dropping in the playoffs, that kind of thing. But looking back at the trade, considering what the teams did and how the players played, it looks a little more like a win-win. Let's go ahead and look at it. So first of all, if you look at the 23-24 season, here's some of the statistics, just the basic statistics here. Julius Randle played 46 games to Karl-Anthony Towns 62 games, 24 points to 21.8, 9 to 8 rebounds. And then Karl-Anthony Towns is quite a bit more efficient, not just with the field goal percentage, but that 3-point percentage was a pretty big deal. Obviously, he's a better shooter, but they both made all-star teams. And the other thing is, they're a similar style of player for the most part. I think Cat is definitely bigger and a better scorer. Julius Randle maybe scores a little more off the dribble, for example. But stylistically, there's a lot of similarities, right? And then the other thing to consider that definitely was a factor in this trade is the contracts. At the time, Julius Randle with the Knicks was on a 4-year deal on a contract worth about $29 million per year. On the other side, Karl-Anthony Towns with the Wolves was also on a 4-year deal, but that contract was worth $55 million, again, with that average annual value. So then if you look from a team perspective, in the 2023-24 season, the Knicks finished 50-32 to the Wolves 56-26. So similar records, the Wolves being a little better, but the Wolves being in the West finished third in the conference, and the Knicks were able to finish second just behind the Celtics last year. And then the results in the playoffs, and this is what's probably really important here, is the Knicks lost in 7 games in the Eastern Conference semifinals. And by the way, Julius Randle, I'll remind you, was injured for the playoffs. So they made it to 7 games in the semifinals without him. And on the other side, the Wolves made it to the Western Conference Finals, and they ultimately lost in 5 games in not a very competitive series against the Mavericks last year. And Karl-Anthony Towns he had a bit of a streaky playoff. These averages are for the playoffs as a whole in 2024, where he averaged 19 points per game, 9 rebounds per game. And just for background, if you don't know, it's pretty normal for a player's efficiency to go down, but Cats went down quite a bit here with 46.6% from the field and just 36 from 3. So if you look at the motives when it comes to wanting to do a trade, wanting to switch some things up. So for the Knicks, there's the injury factor. Mitchell Robinson missed the beginning part of this season, and so the Knicks needed someone who could be a reliable big until he came back, and someone like Karl-Anthony Towns could fill that better than a Julius Randle, who's a true power forward. Obviously, Cat is probably a power forward too, but being a little bit bigger, he can shift into that center role a little bit better until Robinson was able to get back. And then the other thing is that the Knicks had recently acquired OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges, and at the same time they're trying to contend now. So Randle was due for a contract extension, and it seems like the Knicks and Randle definitely weren't on the same page. So instead of getting nothing for Randle and losing him in free agency potentially, they actually were able to get quite a bit, being Karl-Anthony Towns. And then for the Wolves, there was the financial pressure. I think this was probably the biggest factor for them. The NBA implemented the new CBA, and that created potential punishments for the Wolves. At the time, they had one of the highest payrolls in the NBA, and it was just unsustainable financially. Thinking about the big picture, the long term for them, they definitely were trying to contend now. They just had made the conference finals, but it seemed like they wanted to break up the contracts a bit and prioritize building around Anthony Edwards. I think they just didn't see a world where they could keep Edwards and Towns and have this, deep roster that the Wolves have become known for. In trading Cat and getting Randle, they were able to lessen that big contract that Cat was on and create some flexibility for their future. So on October 2nd, 2024, here's the trade. The Knicks received Karl-Anthony Towns, and in return, the Wolves got the Pistons 2025 first-round pick, and then Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo, who's not just a throw-in, he's definitely a reliable and valuable role player. He really stepped up in the playoffs in 2024. Not as much on the Wolves, but some of that's going to be growing pains. We'll see what he looks like in the future. And then here's the results. For the 2024-25 season, the Knicks finished 51-31. That's just 1 game better. And then the Wolves got quite a bit worse in the regular season, finishing just 49-33. That's 7 less wins than the previous season. And they were actually the 6th seed this year. Now, there's some other moving parts when it comes to that. Obviously, the West was stacked this year, and they were just 1 game back from being the 3 seed. So it doesn't tell the full story, but they definitely were not as good in the regular season as they were last year. As for the playoffs, the Knicks actually improved, losing in 6 in the Eastern Conference Finals this time, so making it a round further. And for Karl-Anthony Towns personally, he took another game compared to the previous year with the Wolves. As for the Wolves, they lost in 5 again in the Western Conference Finals, this time to the Thunder, who I would argue is a better team than last year's Mavericks. So you could make the argument that they did slightly better, I guess, but I think it's something similar to the previous season. So they were able to maintain while getting that Karl-Anthony Towns contract off the books. Now, individually, Karl-Anthony Towns had one of his best seasons, probably his best season actually. He was almost at 25 points per game with 12.8 rebounds per game. He shot 52.6 from the field and 42 from 3, and that's over a 72 game sample size. For Randle, his regular season wasn't the best of his career. It was still pretty solid, but his playoffs, I would argue, is one of his better ones. I think you could compare, I think it's the 2020 or 21 season, and maybe statistically from a surface level view, you could make the argument there, but being on a more competitive team here with 21.7 points per game, nearly 6 rebounds per game, but shooting 50% from the field and almost 40% at that 38.5 mark from 3, and that's over a 15 game sample size. This outdid my expectations for Randle on the Wolves this year, especially for the playoffs where he's known to drop off a little bit. And looking back, some of that is due to being one of the more dominant scorers on those Knicks teams of the past, this time being next to Anthony Edwards and having a more balanced roster. It seemed like it definitely helped him, and he was able to be really valuable this playoff. So looking back, this trade was driven by a mix of a couple things. One is that both teams are trying to remain in championship contention right now. Coming off an impressive season for both teams, it seems like the Knicks were trying to make the move to improve just a little bit more to get them over the hump. And then for the Wolves, it seems like they were trying to deal with the inevitable CBA pressures with that Cat contract while trying to keep a competitive and deep team around Ant. Now looking back and considering NBA history, this deal is somewhat of a rare model. You don't have a lot of situations where looking back after a season or even a few seasons that you say, yeah, both teams won. And this seems like it's nearing that. Now, what will be interesting to see is, will we see more of these deals in the future? The CBA, as we've mentioned in other videos, creates a little bit different of a dynamic across the NBA, including providing opportunities for small market teams to compete like the Pacers or the Thunder. But it's pretty interesting to see a blockbuster deal like this be able to work out for both teams. Now, the question still remains, who won the trade? As I just mentioned, I can see an argument saying both teams won, but if I have to pick a winner, it's still the Knicks to me. I think longer term, this deal will age better for the Knicks. Karl-Anthony Towns seems like he's going to be a pillar or a staple for this New York team for years to come. Even if they strip it down and go for another big name, it seems like Brunson and Cat will still be the foundation of this team. But for the Wolves, I mean, in the short term, it helps to have similar success after losing your second best player. But I'm not sure how much value they're going to get back from Randle. Are they going to keep him long term? Are they going to try to move him? I don't think you're getting a Karl-Anthony Towns level player, but maybe that's what they're looking for. They just need Randle to provide some additional support until Anthony Edwards fully develops into the superstar that they might be anticipating. Let me know in the comments who you think won this trade, and who do you think has a brighter future? Is it the Knicks or is it the Wolves? I think someone like Anthony Edwards, being the talent that he is, it makes more of an unknown for the Wolves. I think it's still unclear how good he's going to get, but if he's close to already reaching his peak, I'm not sure who I think has the brighter future. But please let me know, who do you think won the trade in the comments? And thanks for watching Sports Pantheon.